Hello and welcome to Lorelines, everyone. Thanks for coming. We've had episode 22 this week, which is pretty remarkable. I can't believe we've been going this long. It's awesome. Last week we went into Beast Tribes, and this week we're continuing on that trend. But first, I had a few orders of business to share with you all. So, recently we got in touch with LunarCon. I think Cobron can speak to them, but we were accepted to a panel and will be appearing on their show from 12 to 1 p.m. next Sunday. I believe that's August 1?
August 1st, yes.
August 1st from 12 to 1 p.m. And Cobron, please tell us about what we're doing that day and about the special news you have about it.
Yeah, so I'm really excited that we're going to be hosting a panel at LunarCon. It sounds like an awesome event. But basically, we're going to be talking about why the lore in Final Fantasy XIV is so unique and why it does such a good job of drawing so many people in. And during the panel, we're going to be giving away about 3 sets of Aetherite earrings. So have to be present to win. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Cobron, do you want to show them these earrings?
I will drop
Do we
a
have
link
any
in the
picture
chat.
or anything?
I do.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Other points of business. I will be absent myself this month, 2 weeks. I'm going to Otakon in Washington, D.C., August 8th. And then the following week, the 15th, I have a trip with my in-laws. We're going to a lake and just going to hang out for the weekend. So we will have some sort of alternate hosting and or a bye week. That is still in discussion, but we will not be absent 2 weeks straight. That's for sure. So I guess we will talk about that offline, and my apologies for the absence, but we will be continuing. And then regarding stream news, we are looking into a more professional overlay. We're going to keep what makes us us, but try to make a cleaner looking setup. No specific announcements on that yet. And then we're going to be editing and re-uploading all live streams going forward, so cutting down to a 20-second intro, minimizing any stream software issues through edits, push to talk, which we've got now, and trying to keep on target with better moderation. Meowth's been helping us with that last week. If you guys remember, we can go on very long ASEAN tangents, so we're going to try to stay on target a bit more. But that's all I've got for that stuff. Do you guys have any more ads?
Let me mention a great radio voice.
Thanks.
Let me mention a little more on LunarCon. If people aren't familiar with it, there's going to be an in-game convention this coming weekend. It's held on Crystal on Brynhilder, but they'll also be streaming it, so you don't have to create a character there. If you haven't heard of it, you can Google it easily to check it out, or we may be able to drop a link.
We will, and in fact, I'm going to throw us over to Windowed Watch Party and just show their webpage, and then we'll get straight to work. Feel free to feel the silence, guys.
I was about to throw the link in, but I see Vani has beaten me. Thank you. Was there anything else before we started?
Was Cobb getting a link for the Aetherite earrings?
Yeah.
There it is.
I was actually surprised to not see you at your house. Directed towards Fow.
Oh, you're looking for Fow too?
There we are. So that's the LunarCon's main website, and they have various guests scheduled, featured events, contests, and Artists Alley get involved and about. So feel free to step over here. It's just lunarcon.net, which I think was linked already. But these are some of their guests, and we are very pleased to be joining them. And we'll have 3 people on from 12 to 1. So it's super exciting for us. It's a heck of a milestone, and I'm very excited for us to show our presence there. So that's that. That's a big deal.
And thank you guys for your continued support. We really love it.
It means a lot to us. You keep
Absolutely.
So back to business. We left off last night. I think we had last week. We think we had finished up with the Mamulja, and then I don't know if we wanted to re-summarize them. I'll bring up the page, but we have the Gigas race, the Gigants, Gigants.
Gigants?
The
They
three
made it
different.
Gigants.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't know.
Gi-
They made it weird.
Yeah, the three different kinds of giant, essentially.
So I felt really bad for I call them the Gigas, but basically they were slaves, and then they revolted and tried to gain their freedom. So they sent us in to kill them, and we killed them all. The end.
Well, we didn't kill all of them until
Not all
Taco
of
Bell Hard, and then we finished it.
We killed all of those ones.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
killed
because-
them. We killed them, and then we killed them hard.
The beast tribes, in general, really highlight Eorzea's imperfections. Some of the stuff that makes this world feel so real is that everything isn't. Not only is everything not like daisies and butterflies, but sometimes that hardships, that tragedy, is perpetuated by people who ought to be nicer or who seem nice. You know, the city-states are nice to us. They help us out. They help us with this, that, and the other. They're not so nice to the beast tribes in a lot of cases. It makes it
Yeah.
feel very real to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I actually often hold the beast tribes and how the Eorzean city-states treat them as kind of an example of how Eorzea, in many ways, is actually worse than the Empire.
They're a little less honest about the terrible things that they do to people that they consider, if not necessarily outwardly inferior, like the Empire does with quote-unquote savages. At the very least, they do look down on a lot of these tribes and refer to them in various unpleasant terms, and are at war actively with a lot of them.
The beast tribes, I mean, at least the Garlean Empire, does employ beast tribes regardless of what they are, as we see in Stormblood with the Kojin and the Lupin. Something that if you go to Ulda, for example, the beast tribes are straight up banned, for at least where, I don't know, right now, where at this point of the story. I don't know if they are still banned from entering, but at least when we began, up until, I don't know, perhaps the start of this new wave of reconciliation in Shadowbringers, the city-states of Eorzea did not consider these tribes to be regarded as highly as in any kind in not in rights, not in anything else. And the Garlean Empire may have a lot of flaws, but that one is not one of them, since they are a meritocracy.
In fact, they actually regarded them as a sort of like a pestilence because they were the ones that actually began summonings. So with them and their habit of slaying icons, they actually kind of made it a point to root them out, and any type of whether it be Eorzeans or whether it be other beast tribes that helped them in summoning, since it was Solus who first gave out the order that icons are to be put down.
Which had the advantage of creating an external and, I don't even want to say convincing, a true enemy, if not, well, an effective enemy, perhaps, if not the true enemy, for the Empire to unite against. We're saving these people. They're savages. They're doing this foolish thing, which is genuinely damaging the planet. It's a pretty masterful play.
I mean, look at the burn. They did that.
Well,
People like that did that.
it's a very different approach, incidentally, than the Allegan Empire had, which was get them to summon a better one so we can use it as a gigantic battery.
Yeah, that's eco-friendly, right?
Is that the word?
It might be eco-friendly to send them into space.
I mean,
That's so funny.
eco-friendly is a term we like to relate to the Scions too. Are they eco-friendly? Don't know.
Well, if you turn them into fertilizer first.
There you
Would
go.
someone
That's-
care to read the entry on the Gigants? I'm just taking care of something really quick.
Yeah.
I can do it. As the brightest among the Gigants, the Gigas have long subjugated their less gifted kin. They believe hair and beards to be a sign of wisdom, and customarily wear theirs long, binding the coarse strands with decorative rings of metal or leather. Gygases also favor jewelry and other bodily adornments, but lack the dexterity to craft such items themselves. Forced to trade with goblin or Kakern merchants, they barter away trophies obtained through hunting and pillaging. The Gygas were drawn to Mordona following the emergence of the Crystal Tower and appeared to venerate the glittering spire as a holy place, a gateway to the heavens. The kin that served them as slaves rebelled at this migration, however, and established an order of giant kind. The established order of giant kind was plunged into a lasting chaos. So it looks like they had a little bit of a war between different kinds of giants because of that decision.
It's also interesting that these are the brightest, and of course they're like turned to the other ones, and they're like, "No, you serve us." A
It's
little
also-
microcosm.
Right. Even among the giants, they enslave each other based on intelligence or the interpretation of such.
It's also interesting to note too that they regard the Crystal Tower as a sort of gateway to the heavens, which is not too far off from what other, Eorzeans and other beast tribes kind of regarded as. Or actually, no, if we go look back to the Allagans, they did it themselves too, where they regarded the Crystal Tower as their kind of like limitless energy source.
And they're building a stairway to heaven.
Except
Get
they don't
out.
have bards to play it.
I bet you could do it, Ian.
I know I could. Especially with the guitar they gave me. Ayo.
Heyo!
You wouldn't have to go that simple for the gateway to the heavens if they believe so. If we compare, for example, the definition Fan Daniel gave for the big ass Celo Tower at the end of 5.55, the gate of the gods, then it could be even more reason to think that this big ass Celo Tower stands as direct opposition of the Crystal Tower.
It's actually an
Yes.
interesting thought.
I have been saying that since about 5.4, before they actually revealed the towers. Like, I bet there's going to be another big one. So I'm very excited about the possibilities inherent in that, because it does seem like, I mean, the Crystal Tower, whatever it may have done, was intended and created, and in Shadowbringers is a beacon of hope. And not sure what's up with our dreamer, but there's definitely some kind of despair or something going on there, I'm thinking.
If that tower is anything like the other towers we've seen and it basically has rooms full of different beast tribes, like members in it, I would be wondering if maybe we'll see Gigants in there as well because of their veneration of the Crystal Tower. Instead of willingly worshipping the Crystal Tower, they could potentially be turned to forcibly worshipping whatever is inside this one.
That would be very interesting.
Other than that, though, I don't really think the Giants have that much lore. Mainly that they just ended up getting enslaved a lot, either by their own kind or by other people.
Got some ugly boys here. So we've got the Gigas here. Here are the true giants, regular giants.
And
Much
then
of their
the
history. Go ahead.
and then the Hekona chairs that we see in Copperbell.
That word
He
is so hard to
cat
say.
on chair.
Yeah, that exactly.
Weird. Doesn't look like a cat at all.
Right? Not even a he cat. I think somebody said Hekaton Kires, and I just don't know. Does anybody know?
It
Anybody
looks
know?
very Greek, and I would bet it's Hecaton Keris.
It is Greek.
Hekatonker. I
Care.
know because it is the name of Vanille's Eidolon in Final Fantasy 13.
Oh, well, there we go.
Aha. Good to have an absolute word on it. Thank you.
Sorry for stepping away like that. I suppose we should read some of this. Giants. For much of their history, the giants lived as slaves of the Gigas. When their masters grew distracted by the preparation to migrate to Mordona, however, the giants seized the opportunity to revolt. Those who escaped the shackles of servitude fled to distant lands, with many finding refuge in the snowy fields of Querthus. In contrast to the red-hued skin of the Gigas, the coloring of the giants tends toward blues and greens. Giants are commonly hairless, characteristic endlessly mocked by their dominating kin. As former slaves, they were given little in the way of clothing and have since hung their meager loincloths with shields and scraps of armor from unfortunate adventurers. See a few bucklers there. Honestly, they're so big that those pugilist weapons that one is using kind of look like bent, spiked tower shields.
Yeah.
Huh.
You almost get the sense that they beat up a bunch of sprouts to get that.
Was there not a story of a group of adventurers from Ul'dah who faced the same fate when they went out and tried to face a giant and were killed? And you find them in the Palace of the Dead. Does anyone remember that story?
Not offhand.
All I remember is Edda.
Is that's the other adventure group other than Edda Blackheart's
Yes.
group?
Oh, were these the ones?
There was 3 others.
Yeah, they were at Tantara originally too, and I think also at Copperbell. And I think Copperbell was where they got beat up.
Yes, there were two. There was another group that we meet after Sastasha, which we greet. They went looking for Baderon, and they were basically I think it was Rugadin, Mikote, and Lafel, and we meet them for Tamtara, and then the last dungeon of level 15. That's when Alian and Isildur they tell us that they found this team basically ripped off to death by the Hekatonkers.
Sorry, looking it up now. Continue.
So they
No.
eat stuff.
I was done. That's where it ends with Alian and Isildur. That if you recall, they later joined the Signs of the Seventh Dawn. They are part of it now. They're part of the group now. Well, after the whole thing, that's where this other team ends. That's killed by the Hekatonkers.
So the Hekatonkers, similar to the giants, the Hekatonkers were once also thralls of the Gigas. Some 300 years ago, however, history tells us that these Gigants were sold as slaves to the Thorn dynasty. Their monstrous strength, controlled by means of ensorcelled helms, the Hekatonkers were forced to toil with pick and hammer in Copperbell mines. But it seems the helms were somehow flawed, their magics fleeting. The Gigants suddenly turned on their Ul'dah overseers. The slave masters retreated from the onslaught, then deliberately collapsing the mine's supports to trap the rampaging Hekatonkers underground. That's Copperbell. So centuries passed, and the Invention of new technologies enabled a scheme to clear the rebel choked shafts of Copperbell. When miners from the Amalgina and Sons mineral concern blew apart the bedrock, however, they found themselves face to face with the tool-wielding descendants of the Gigants slaves, Hektoncares, possessed by a simmering rage that had festered from one generation to the next for nigh on 300 years. I blame the Lalafels.
How
they-
dare they survive? I mean,
know.
they were down there safe from the calamity and everything. They should be grateful.
Got
will
flowing
say
water,
Thorn-
got weird animals.
You could
Thorn
show
doesn't
us
sound
your.
like Sorry.
You could show your gratitude for us freeing you from this hole by getting back to work.
I will say Thorn doesn't sound like a Lalafell name to me, but I don't know
That's true.
enough about that.
I mean, if it's Thorn Bedorn.
Thorn Bedorn. Yeah, Midnight says, I like how I came into I blame the Lalafels, which after realizing what was discussed, same. Yeah, like these people involved in the syndicate, especially the one that that Raubon murdered for us, they seem to like indentured servitude at a minimum.
It's that's another thing I think I was mentioning earlier with the beast tribes and treatment. Well, the capitalism of Ul'dah is another real world parallel that makes the world feel really realistic, and the way that wealth tends to travel from generation to generation would, to me, imply that the Gina and Sons people that found these were the descendants of the ones who caused it, finding the descendants of the victims.
Yeah, no doubt.
What do you mean consequences don't go away? What is this?
Of course, it's not a perfect system, but like I felt also quite realistic when Lolorito, who is, of course, we know he's a ruthless merchant, but that's Lolorito, and that is too Godbear Manderville. Not just, of course, it's flawed, but it also can be really positive for Uldah's growth, as we see in Stormblood. So I would say it's like pretty much every other system in the world. Some are better, some are worse, but none is perfect.
Absolutely agree.
I found the group that went in.
You did?
Their names are Dolores Bear, Kikino, and Manfa. They were a Makot, a Rogadin, and a Lalafell. They were indeed killed in Copperbell mines. They essentially saw what happened with us with our going through the first few dungeons after Tamtara Deepcroft, and they went into the Copperbell mines and wanted to make a name for themselves. But the Hetonkir had actually proved too much for them, and they literally tore them apart.
They should have brought a fourth.
Long after that, though, you can find their corpses walking around in Palace of the Dead, among many other adventurers and enemies whom you have recently slain.
Palace of the Dead really does feel like the washing up ground of just so many dead characters.
It's because it's a burial ground, and for some reason, there is an outlet to Gelmora, and there's an outlet to Thanalan. There's just a ton of different like catacombs and passages to places outside the Black Shroud, where if someone has access to them, then you can bring corpses back into the Palace of the Dead and reanimate them.
This is actually one of my favorite things about this universe, where they don't allow you to be a necromancer, but this is absolutely possible and happening.
I mean, you can get the necromancer title if you're patient enough.
That's true.
And your internet doesn't suck. This is the thing holding me back.
And-
Definitely the
And we
only.
know for a fact that the Allied Beast Tribe quest explains the existence of zombies and undead. It's attributed to the Lalafels.
We're just going to go on and on about that, aren't we?
Yeah, thaumaturgy and alchemy being dominated primarily by Lalafels is very suspect in that regard.
I mean, you have all the ether of a taller person compressed. It can't be that surprising.
Let's continue.
They're not all like Kokobusi, basically.
So I think next on our list is our favorite fish boys. the Namazu.
Yes!
Oh God.
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes.
They're the
dinner?
best beast tribe, by the way. Best.
They're the best
That's
beast
down.
tribe to grace my dinner table.
I
I
am currently
concur.
searching for a PDF, but my apologies.
These two
I think-
views are not conflicting. They can be the
Back-
best and also the most delicious.
And also the most.
I
love
just
that.
love that they have an origin myth. Everything about the big one and everything about the Namazu. They are hands down my favorite beast tribe.
I mean, Sui gets the enlightened. Come on.
Yes,
I
Segetsu
like
the
having-
Enlightened is a prophet.
I like having the minion out, so I get the little squish squish noise when it walks around.
I agree. Midnight, the gold sticky whisker, best gold minion. So I am going to read the Namazu origin myth, which I think this is the only beast tribe that really has one that goes in depth. Once upon a time, long, long, long ago, when the one river had just begun to flow, there was born on the bottom of a tiny, tiny stream a walloping great catfish. Day in and day out, this monstrous specimen would twitch its whiskers, chasing after fish and gobbling them down. Day in, day out, gobble, gobble, gobble. And the more he ate, the larger he grew, until one day he'd become so enormously heavy that he could no longer chase his dinner. So what did he do? But turn himself upstream and open his wide, enormous maw. Carried by the current, fish after fish was swept down his gullet. And the already enormous catfish grew to such a spectacular size that it became wedged between the banks of the river. Resigned to the price for its gluttony, he twisted and bit, shearing off the end of his own tail to make himself smaller. The tip fell and flopped and turned into a little catfish. Yet even with the loss of his big tail, the colossal catfish could not squirm free. The stream was blocked, and the current ran dry. There was mud, but no water. Unable to swim, the little catfish propped himself up on his fins and sprouted legs, on which he stood. And thus did the tail which became a catfish become a Namazu.
Does explain how their cleverness level. No brains.
Yes, absolutely,
yes.
absolutely.
God, I can only imagine what potential reality in the ancient world gave birth to these things that they now exist now as this kind of creation myth and what we meet in Kugane for the first
I
time.
of course blame Mitron.
I was very I also blame Neutron for this, but I think that meeting the shitty catfish in Kugane, the Namazu who betrays us, was such a horrible introduction to the beast tribe, because I hated the Namazu after that. And then I was like, oh man, they're making Namazu beast tribe. I don't care about them. And then I went to Yangsha and I did all their quest lines and I was like, these are the best beast tribes ever. And then their quest line was the best beast tribe quest line ever.
The quest line is a lot of fun. I recommend
Yeah.
watching the cutscenes because it's a real treat. I did enjoy also after we met that one that did indeed give them rather a negative light. We did go out and get to hang out with others that were not nearly so bad.
Yes.
I think that the swindler one, what was his name, Gaioro or something?
Like Gyoro or something, yeah.
Yeah, he definitely gives you an initial impression as less than stellar. But a lot of them are just they're just trying to make their way in the world. They just want to have a lot of fun. They just want to be part of civilization.
They're essentially like a Stormblood, like, because we had the Hildebrand quests in Stormblood, but these are like Hildebrand level quest lines.
Yeah, if Hildebrand was a beast tribe, then that's how you get the Namazu.
Yeah, although their society and how they developed is a little bit more heavy. They were mostly barbaric and primitive until about 800 years ago, and General Gannon of the noble Regine family enlisted a number of them to act as messengers, and they swam across the one river while they were getting shot at by arrows to deliver messages to both sides, and allowed General Gannon to win. So that's kind of where they got their little bells, is a reminder of their deeds that they did for the Doman army, and they were basically looked at as bringers of good tidings. And if you do the Namazu quest in Yangsha, they still bring this up.
In a lot of ways, the Namazu actually kind of felt like, for me, like the more kind-hearted and mercantile version of what the Lupin ended up becoming in a more martial sense for Doma. Like, Doma was more eager to ingratiate itself to and integrate with the tribes around it rather than just like fight with them.
Just a quick sidebar to the audience. If anyone knows where to acquire a PDF copy of Encyclopedia 2, we would love to have our hands on it, especially since we have several members who physically own the actual books. I just don't, and I would love to be able to put them up. So if anybody knows, feel free to hop on our Discord and DM us or whatever and see if we can grab it, because I'm digging up and I cannot find.
Yep, I don't know. I've got the second book open right now. That's what I'm reading from.
Exactly. We're looking for...
but yeah, it'd be nice to have something on screen. Maybe if you could go to their Burning Man festival.
Right.
The Namazu symbol is actually something that they just ganked from other tribes, basically, but they say it stands for the One River, so it's this flowy thing.
They essentially gained all of their built-up culture from the Domans and the tribes of the steppe.
I think that the Namazu are kind of unique as far as Beast Tribe goes. They don't have a primal. They don't worship anything. They don't have a governing body. They're just kind of these little anarchist catfish that troll each other all day.
Every one of them except for...
Kappa says they worship money. That's true.
Every one of them except for Suigetsu, who just like has proper disdain towards every one of his fellow Namazu.
Yes.
He is going to lead them into the future. He's going to lead them into a bright new future.
Kicking and screaming.
One thing I do think is interesting, if you do the Namazu lead-up quests to the Beast Tribe, there's that one Namazu, and you know they're trying to find out what they're good at. So they try gathering, they try fighting, they try crafting, and they're terrible at everything. And their version of giving up is, I'm going to become an arms dealer because I can't think of anything else to do, and they're really good at it.
That is quite funny.
If they were going to have a primal and it turned out to be that fish that's tail was what produced them originally, that would be quite the sight to
I would never kill the big one, ever. I would just sit there and wipe.
I would love to see us summon that up as something that would help us in the Endwalker like events. That would be an interesting twist.
The big one versus Susano Go.
Yeah, like primals helping us for once. That would be interesting.
So I don't think. Well, I mean, I think we should talk about the 777, and then we can move on to the next Beast Tribe, the Namazu Beast Tribe quest line, where they basically have to hold a festival with 777 attendees, or they're all going to die horribly. And we get to see all the different ways that they die, which is what Bonnie was talking about. Every time you do a rank up. Which just goes to show that the Namazu are left to their own devices, actually terrible at everything, but that's what makes them so adorable.
And on the first, if you do the Qatari dailies, it's heavily implied that the Namazu met one of those fates on the first originally.
Oh, they're all dead. I was really hoping they weren't, but they're all dead.
They helped people survive the flood. That was a noble sacrifice on their part. A very delicious sacrifice.
Yes, they also had played an integral role in the aftermath of the 8th Emerald Calamity.
Do tell.
So it was stated in, I believe, one of the short stories that the Namazu, particularly one with a book, was one of the ones who helped Sid and Nero kind of figure things out. So, Seigetsu.
He is always the enlightened one.
He was the enlightened one, yes. Couldn't have had Time Traveler Shadowbringers without him.
So
No,
I gotta ask.
Don't get that stuck in my head again. I only just recently
Too
got
late.
it out of my head.
I gotta ask.
Too
you
late.
guys,
There's no
though.
escape.
Did everyone like the Namazu Beast Tribe quests for those who did them? And did they prefer those to the Moogle Beast tribes? Because I know you guys did both if you were a crafter or gatherer.
I 100% prefer the Namazu quests to the Moogle ones, but I think part of that was because, unlike the Namazu, the Moogles honestly got really old in Heaven's Ward. They got hit over the head repeatedly, like players did, having to do all their quests, and then on top of that, the admittedly nice interactions with the dragons and with the nobles of Ishgard and the Moogles all working together, but it still felt like the Namazu had a more well-delivered story, I think.
They did.
And it was less, it didn't overstay its welcome.
I 500% prefer the Namazu, but part of that is also zone design, right? Because the churning mists are kind of this long, slow flight, and you're doing not very difficult but slightly annoying labors for very minimal XP. The Namazu were legitimately beneficial to your leveling experience. It was very much more like the Stormblood version of the Facets quests, where it's not like
Bonnie.
just so much XP, and it was fun, and music was like this upbeat, chipper thing that we could really just have fun, and the zone design of the Azium Steppe was just from the perspective of a Beast Tribe quest seemed better designed.
I do think that's a big part of it. In general, the Beast Tribe quests, the quality of life from A Realm Reborn to Heavensward was a huge jump. And the jump from Heavensward to to Stormblood was also another significant one, though not quite as big. It definitely got more streamlined, more smooth, less. I felt like with that many levels, it felt a little bloated at times, and that did affect my enjoyment. I did enjoy most of the story of the Moogle ones, but I still prefer the Namazu.
I don't know. After the disappeared Moogles that you had to find, I was kind of done with the Moogles.
I just
Agreed.
enjoyed blowing them up with Kupo bombs.
Yes, or punching them like Sadirgri once.
So I had been awake for like a couple days by the time I got to the Moogles in Heavensward. So I was very done very quickly with Moogles.
And yes, Kappa said in chat, the references to literature and the jokes were gold, like the smart of war.
Oh, jeez. I remember that now. Yeah, Koji had a field day with the Namazu.
Koji also had a field day with performing the Moogle theme song, King Mog's theme song.
May he reign in peace forevermore, Kupo.
I'm so glad I inflicted that upon Soldier the other day.
That scene was the best scene in all of the Namazu
Agreed.
quest line.
Right, like just blowing their minds, including ours, and he's just like deathly serious.
And then lighting a catfish on fire.
Ayumi, where did this picture come from?
Google. All you have to do is just search Namazu and 1,000 images pop up.
Got it. So this is somebody's personal screenshot. Well, enjoy.
Oh, yeah.
Enjoy.
Oh, don't worry. There's like 30 others. The same expression.
I will say that's one thing that they did right in that quest line, at least. And also going forward in Shadowbringers, just as an aside, I know I'm getting a little far afield, but they made a point in Shadowbringers to set up really cool moments where you'd be like, oh, I want to take a screenshot of my character. And this was one of those that they had back in Stormblood as well.
Agreed. I will say the only reason I really wanted to compete in the last FanFest costume competition was to get an Namazu plushie.
Fanfish?
Yes, fanfish.
Excellent.
Nice.
Someone needs to put an ass in that cutscene.
Yes.
Alternately, a Warrior of Light with the Namazu head on.
Ironically, if you've done it already, you can just dress your character in an Asian outfit. Or the Shadowless outfit.
Yes, and then put the Namazu head on.
Yeah, exactly. And then just go back into the cutscene and ta-da!
That's brilliant. I should do that.
We've set one of our chat members on a path.
Yes, yes. Let the G pose flow through you.
Just share with all of us because we'll want to see it.
So what's the next beast tribe on the docket?
There are other beast tribes?
I mean, we could.
There are so many beast tribes.
We could do the Kojin or the Lupin next.
You certainly could. I had the technically Ananta were after Gigas, but we do not. It does not matter. Why don't we tackle the Lupin?
Sure.
Very tall wolf boys, full furry. Sorry, not sorry.
I mean, the Domans they had talking catfish people and they had talking wolves. They had it all.
They were actually one that I was actually quite interested in because we actually didn't get too much background information on them until after we cleared base Stormblood, and our only in was their general. I forget his name, but he took over for Heian whenever he had to leave, particularly when he left to go help with the Bosnian resistance effort. That Lupin general was stood in his stead.
You know, y'all asked how we felt about the Mughals versus the Namazu, and I will flat out say, I was super pissed about the Namazu because I wanted the Lupin as a beast tribe, not the fish.
Okay, that's totally fair. I would have loved the Lupin beast tribe.
No, that's not fair. We wanted the Lupin as a
mean,
playable race.
Well, okay, now I'm conflicted. The Lupin really feel like they're kind of like all over the place a little bit since the Doman diaspora, so you could almost make an argument that they could become adventurers. Vieira style.
So this picture is from the 2017 All Saints Wake post called Pumpkin Spice Lupin. I've been missing the Halloween quests so badly. But yeah, that's an actual Lupin, and that's your little wolf outfit from Halloween.
I would say that the Lupin, perhaps they are not. We don't have any particular tribal lore about them because the feel I get from the Lupin is that they are so deeply ingrained into Doman culture that the Domans see them probably they consider them one of them regardless of if they look wolfy or not. It's like Heian, for example, his main general is a Lupin, or in a normal Doman village there's a number of Lupin too. I guess that their culture is probably at this point just Doman culture. Then that's why we don't have special lore about the Lupin. I guess at some point they may have, but right now I think they're just Omen.
I mean, there's a little bit in the lore book, but not nearly as much as some of the other beast tribes. They have a little bit about their society and their primary industry, which is soldiery, which we already know that. They're fiercely loyal because they're dog people. And even their geographical origin is unknown. They're mostly considered to be migratory. They came from Nangsha about 2,000 years ago. They arrived in Doma, and during that war, 800 years prior, where the Namazu were serving as messengers, the Lupin fought on the same side as the Namazu. The Lupin commander Garo and his unusual friendship with Doma's founding father is kind of a famous case. His acceptance as Ganon's chief retainer was a turning point, which saw the long line of Garo's descendants swearing allegiance to Doma until the Empire took over. And then they were unsatisfied with Lord Cayenne, and then that's when they started fighting for the Empire.
I also think that this is one of those instances where getting away from the term beast tribes and into the term tribes, as I recall, the Endwalker site's starting to do, really is going to be a lot more helpful, because to my knowledge, Lupin don't summon primals. They probably revere Kami the same as other domens.
Mm-hmm. Or they also revere Susanoo and Tsukiyomi, like the Kojin, the Namazu, and the Domans. My other thing with the Lupin was that I was wondering if we would ever see them in other outfits than the one we always see them in. But they always seem to be wearing the same pair of like metal leg plates on their feet and the same coat.
Lupin traditional garb. Definitely not just that they didn't want to model a bunch of different clothing to their forms.
Mm-hmm.
Hakuro, that's his name. I couldn't remember it off the top of my head.
Yeah. Hakuro, right?
Wasn't
right.
Wasn't he the guy in charge? We're talking about the general that Ian has as kind of like one of his seconds. He was the one that we met at the end of 4.0, the one who was leading the group of Lupin who were indentured to the Empire.
Yes, we met him right before we entered Alamigo, actually. We had a solo duty with him, actually.
Yeah, and then when you beat him, you're like, yeah, we beat you senseless because we were trying to tell you the truth, that Ian is alive, Doma is free, and stop fighting us.
Yeah, he didn't believe us at first. We actually had to beat it into him.
It was a real... I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. That was all I was saying.
I was just saying, it's a really powerful moment that really stands out to me even through all of Stormblood. Because, he's that loyal, he's that on track, but he also, like, you kick his butt and he's like, okay, I guess there's something to this person after all.
Another honorable warrior tribe.
It's good to know that Ian has such loyal followers besides just his immediate country in Doma. I don't know if they're primarily Hure that live in Yangsha, but also with the Lupin, it just shows the diversity between his nation.
They do have Aura and Rogadin as well, around as well, I've noticed.
Yes, I forgot about, because Brosetsu, as he's usually called.
Mm-hmm. And there's a few NPCs that are Rogadin that wander around the Enclave as well, like the lady who runs the cooking stuff.
And then there's the whole Buduga tribe trying to bet him.
Oh, this is interesting. So, the origin of the term beast tribe.
Go on.
In the year 1559 of the 6th Astral Era, The Sultanate of Ul'dah, under heavy influence by the Syndicate, officially coined the term Beast Tribe, using it to describe foreign entities whose interests directly oppose or interfere with those of the city-state. Amalja were declared enemies of the people for opposing expansionist policies that saw the tribe's traditional homeland divided up by mining concerns.
Yep, that was.
So
So-
again, it was Ul'dah. That's
Yeah,
right.
again, it
basically-
was Ul'dah and the Lalafels.
They intended to drive them out of commerce because they were having this competition, and they didn't like that competition. They were like, "What's a way that we can get them out without, having to actually be good businessmen?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a term born of convenience, fostered in self-serving sanctimony.
Which is why it's kind of nice to see that we're getting away from it a little.
I agree. There's so much realism in the culture of this game. Like, there are definitely assholes everywhere and historical prejudices and misunderstood animosities. Brings depth to the world.
Ul'dah is steeped with money schemes. Like, you will never find any type of person or any type of business in Ul'dah that doesn't have blood money running through it.
Even the charities.
It's down to the foundations, yep.
Yep, the Mirage Trust and everything else. Just blood-soaked oligarchy.
One almost has to wonder if it's because of the corruption of Ul'dah, or maybe CLD was different in that regard. But we will never know because history is written by the winners.
I found Namazu.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. You found Namazu in pots.
They have a habit of doing that a lot. It must be like cool and comfortable in there.
Yes, yes.
I don't know, because when pots are sat out in the sun, and those don't look shaded, you sat out in the sun, they can get pretty hot.
Well, maybe they're self-cooking catfish then.
Good thing those sun's only out for 30 minutes a day.
Unless-
Ew.
Unless the player character walks by, in which case you have as much sun as you want.
As M jokes.
That was a brilliant joke. Pun quota, bare minimum met.
You could say it's very bright.
Okay, you guys. Next one.
Yes, illuminate us more.
So we're going on to what? The Kojin next?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, there should be Kojin at the docks there, actually, as well.
Or you could just go to Tamamizu.
That too.
Tamamizu works.
To the Ninja Turtle homeland.
To answer the question about Ul'dah, technically the rule is of the Sultana, but there are many representatives of many different sides of society that the Sultana first has to consult for passing down laws, which is should work like a constitutional monarchy, but the thing is that this before Nanamo began seeing and acting like a proper ruler that understands the ways of her people and has to use them for the good for the benefit of all, instead of letting corrupt people run the country. Before that, of course, it was a dangerous thing to have this kind of government. If most of your syndicate representatives that prevent the monarch from passing rules are corrupt, and that was the way I see that was mainly Ul'dah's problem. And of course, it needed Nanamo to step up and take the reins of and she still has not changed. And to be fair, she has not changed how Ulda works. Ulda is still a nation of commerce and money. What she did was to rekindle. How do you?
Rekindle.
No,
Nope.
I don't know the word.
Reconstitute?
No, redirect the
Ah.
the aims of these merchants instead of seeking the disgrace and misfortune of their competitors. With the Saltery program and stuff, and when she talks with Godber Manderville and Lolorito, what she seeks, and they both agree, is the betterment of the merchants, not the detriment of their competitors, and that's what made Ulda began to thrive.
Coberon, do we have an entry on the Kojin?
We do. So, drawing on the eldritch wisdom of their ancestors, the Kojin are able to create everlasting bubbles of magical force to enfold their underwater holdings, such as that which encapsulates the settlement of Tamamizu, which we have there on screen. Many of the Kojin's rituals and blessings are centered on life in the sea, and their command of water and wind aspected energies can even allow surface dwellers the ability to breathe beneath ocean waves. Their primary industries are mercenary contracts, trade, and handicraft. And there are two distinct factions of the Kojin, the Red Kojin, which are more numerous and aggressive, and the less populous Blue Kojin, who value a more harmonious approach to life. They are also prodigiously long-lived. They have a lot of respect for their elders, and they're known for their large and well-muscled frames. Their hearts and lungs are also highly developed, so they can spend a lot of time underwater. They are led by the Divine Circle, at least the Kojin of the Blue are. And when the Garleans invaded Doma, the Red Kojin, in order to maintain their position and their treasures, sold themselves to the Garleans as sellswords, which let them carry out their quote-unquote tribe's sacred purpose by requesting valuable objects in return for their mercenary services.
I seem to recall there was some cleverness of like, yes, pay us, but then they would secretly go for the things that were like, relics for their kami or whatever.
Right. So, give us 20,000 gil plus that brass urn to pee in, but it's actually a sacred treasure.
Exactly.
But we want it.
Total sidebar on the Kojin. One of the first things I noticed actually in Stormblood is that they're not turtles. That's a backpack.
Yes, the shells are something they wear, and I'm not sure.
They wear the
what
shells,
the deal
so
is.
that might be something that kind of goes back to their evolutionary past, and maybe there's some pride there. But they definitely don't have shells. They seem to wear shells.
Right.
I wonder if those shells act as like actual backpacks, if they put valuables in them to carry.
That would be really brilliant.
Now I suddenly hope so.
Eat turtle, use olive turtle.
It's quite possible it could be like a cultural thing, the big ones. I don't know.
Now imagine coming across a turtle in real life that actually just, he didn't actually have a shell, he just wore a shell. You just picked him up and the straps broke.
Oh yeah, right.
I will say I very much enjoyed the Kojin quest line. It wasn't as great as the Namazus, but I thought it was really interesting how they addressed the kami in that, and Tsukomo, the little mammoth thing, was really interesting, and how that led into the Four Lords, and I forgot the character's name.
Wasn't
Someone help me.
that Genbu?
Oh, you mean
Or no?
Soroban?
Soroban.
Zoroban, thank you.
Yeah.
How that led to Sorbonne becoming the new Genbu for the Four Lords.
It is really remarkable. I still have kind of a trouble understanding that quest line. I mean, the mammoth seemed so real for so long, and then towards the end, it's like, well, should we just discuss it? It's quite interesting, really.
I am perfectly fine discussing it.
So my memory's not great on this, but there's a little tiny mammoth, looks like a Kojin. He's like a doll, and he seems conscious and has a will, and speaks to both Sorbonne and us.
With some derision.
And go ahead.
Oh,
I wanted to correct the Beast Tribe questline is not its main character is not Zorban. It's the other Kojin that has
That's right.
his name is Kabuto.
Kabuto. Helmet.
Yeah, Kabuto and Tsukumo. Yeah, the little
Kabuto right
mammoth.
here. And,
The little kami mammoth.
he's actually on screen right now. I've got him right here.
Yep.
Yes.
And actually, Tsukumo was the one who suggested forming the Divine Circle.
Yes. So this is all very curious because nobody remembers him speaking or acting except us, and I don't really know how to address this, but it's quite interesting.
I think it's very much a situation where it was the kami speaking to us, but not actually appearing. Because if you think about it, the things that they tell us to do, the things that we realize because of that, is nothing that we wouldn't have realized on our own.
Which in by itself is funny too, because we still get reminded of this. Or we still need reminded of a lot of things.
Right.
It almost feels like the way you put it like that, it almost reminds me of the Dark Knight quests. But in this case, it's a more beneficent entity that comes along and is actually able to interact with people, or at least appear to, for a time.
Right.
What else about the Kojin?
Their god.
Susano. Lord of the party.
Which we've gone over him, but I mean...
We have.
To be entirely fair, the Susano is incidentally the kami we summon as a primal, but Tsukuyomi is by Elidibus's words when he was inhabiting Xenos' body. Tsukuyomi was also one of their major kamis. The thing is that the kamis are worshipped by pretty much that area of pretty much all Third, except perhaps the Zim steppe. So it's the Kojin, it's the Namazu, it's the Domans, and it's the Hingans probably all worship these beings. So it's not just it's more like an extended religion than just the Kojin. The Kojin just incidentally believe in the Shinto version of spirits and kami can inhabit objects, and that's how we summon both Susano and Tsukuyomi, if you remember the mirror, of course.
Yep. So we've seen both Susano, who's the god of the sea, and Tsukuyomi, which is the god of the moon, goddess of the moon. The one we have not seen is Amaterasu, the god of the day, or the sun, or who I would assume would be inspired by a Zem in universe.
The reason that it wasn't made, and it was actually in the thought process of being made,
right?
Which we covered this last time, but I want to say it again. The reason it wasn't conceived actually was because its initial concept was too similar to that of Lakshmi, and we can venture a guess also as to why future content kind of disallowed that.
They were probably planning on using similar themes to what ended up becoming what they wanted to do with us, potentially, in Walker, ?
Well, with Amaterasu being the sun god, it kind of went hand in hand with what we were going to be shown, or what we were going to find out. So they just thought, well, on 2 or more fronts, it's probably best to just not include the 3 gods of Shinto religion, just include 2 of them.
Right, and have it just be Tsukuyomi and Susanoo. It makes me wonder if Amaterasu will show up again in Myths and Legends, the 24-man stuff in Walker.
Well, the 24-man is supposed to be Pandemonium, so...
I thought Pandemonium was the 8-man.
Wait, yeah, I've got it mixed around.
Yes, but given that they already mentioned that Endwalker is not going to follow the normal expansion direction, meaning the expansion being limited to pretty much only the expansion areas, but this time we're going to pretty much roam around wherever and whenever we needed all of the available map, and hopefully perhaps the first. It's not impossible that we meet the Othardian people, and they have and perhaps a side quest, perhaps an optional quest, mentions their kami of the sun being Amaterasu in myths. They don't have to summon it. They can just tell us, and we can laugh because hey, that's us.
So I liked how the Kojin actually used various relics as their means of summoning. And as for crystals, it wasn't in particular about how they would use crystals in tandem with the artifacts. The artifacts were the primary source of the summoning. So it was a unique and fresh idea on the take of summoning. Especially with Tsukuyomi too, who used the mirror, but also had to use crystals as well. It harkened back to the fact that with 1,000 years of prayer from Thornton, he was able to pull off a summoning with the Knights of the Round, using the relic of Haldrath.
It also touches on the way that primals are created with prayer and sacrifice of crystals. In this case, the mirror performing like a concept crystal type of function, having the idea, the concept of the primal, and then the crystals to actually empower and create.
Yes, in Tsukuyomi's case, I agree, because Tsukuyomi is pretty much a super version of Yotsuyu, so she was probably drawing into what her idea of herself as Tsukuyomi would be, not how others may envision Tsukuyomi. Meanwhile, Susanoo was summoned through 3 artifacts and perhaps some general collective idea of how Susanoo would look like from the ether stored by centuries and centuries of prayer. So yeah, the kami primal summonings, they are kind of, each one has has its own particularities, the way I see it.
Next one we move on to.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe we could go back to Eorzea and tackle Garabania. We've got
If
Yamanta.
I may, a final note on the Kojin, we have to remember, well, that Zenos's famous most powerful katana, I think that was Ame no Habakiri.
Habakiri.
Yes, that one. That was a red Kojin possession. If you recall, it was given to him by Yotsuyu by means of apologizing for her mess up with the Confederation. And well, we know Zenos like swords, so went well, and that was pretty much the weapon his weapon of choice until he decided to go archaic and become a botanist.
The
angry botanist.
the Amen Habakiri actually stands for the Snake Slayer of Heaven.
I have some theories on the Snake Slayer, but this is probably not the episode to get into them.
Yeah, I was about to say, I was like thinking it too, and I'm like, maybe later.
Another time, or perhaps in Discord.
So we were going to move on to Gurabanya, and I guess maybe the Ananta?
I think so. Cobron had to relaunch, so we're waiting on that. But I can pull up the Ananta's wiki entry.
As another small entry on that, it's the second name for the Totsuka no Tsurugi, which is the sword wielded by Susanoo. So you could literally say that Xenos was wielding the sword of the heavens.
Fitting.
Though Susanoo was wielding the Amino Murakumo.
He was using the sword of the gathering storms, which befitting for him. But the cameo reference, or the reference to the Ame no Murakumo, was the Tatsuka no Tsurugi in Shinto religion.
All I
But
know is
not
I
the same
still
one.
really want a meeting between Susanoo and Ravana.
Honestly,
You'd have a
I
heck of a
would
party.
I would be so excited to see the more primals interacting with each other. Kind of like how I feel like they almost kind of did a little bit in ARR, like very little, and then maybe a little bit in Eden as well with Ifrit and Garuda, or at least the versions of them on the first. But like, there's been such vanishingly small interactions between primals, and it'd be really cool to
Yeah.
see them kind of like go
agree.
toe to toe or just talk. Like, but everybody's got in their mind that idea of like someone is going to die of fun with Ravana and Susanoo. They would be really good, I think, together, like a good like power dynamic.
Another thing that I forgot to mention. Sorry for interrupting again. The Tatsuka no Tsurugi and the Ame no Habakiri, according to Shinto religion, was also the sword that slayed Yamato no Orochi, the eight-headed serpent of the heavens. So if there's any kind of comparison or any kind of thoughts to be drawn off of that, feel free.
Yeah, the legend of Yamato no Orochi, if I recall correctly, is later used for Sirius' backstory, the thing with the maidens.
Right, that was what I was
Yes.
trying to think in my head. Was like Seiryu. That kind of fits
Yeah.
Seiryu.
It's very much Seiryu, and the phase transition for that fight involves many snakeheads. Summoning a wave, I believe.
Yes. Stormblood was, for it being, I mean, this is just personal opinion too, for it being slightly weaker story-wise, it was still a very, very, very good expansion.
It was very flavorful, full of savory content.
And
If you
Yes.
if you'll allow me the comparison,
Go ahead.
I always compare Stormblood. You know me, I have a degree of knowledge of the Final Fantasy 13 trilogy. I always compare Stormblood with Final Fantasy 13 2 as perhaps the weaker, but in terms of story, but a very needed bridge between the big titles that are in this case 13 Online Returns. So it's not like I don't enjoy it. It's just that perhaps it falls flat without context. But after Shadowbringers, I've been it happened to me like it happened with 13-2 after Line Returns, that you have to appreciate it because you know what it's laying the grounds for. So yeah.
That's a good comparison. Next on the list
Is the Ananta. The Ananta are a race of Lamia-like beastmen. They are indigenous to the mountains near Alamigo and are solely female. Their affiliated primal is Lakshmi, the Lady of Bliss, whom they worship as a creator goddess. The Ananta are said to have existed since the time of ancient Alag. Hint, hint. They're known for their skill in spell and gemcraft. They are divided by two sister tribes, the Vira, who see Lakshmi as an embodiment of freedom, and the Kalyana, who consider their goddess to personify a transcending beauty, which they emulate while ignoring everything else around them. So tempered before even tempered, they worship their jewelry.
Vanity.
Vanity, yep.
As for the Ananta, if I may point out to something I wanted to say. Sorry, today I'm being quite slow. One of them, regarding how they are so little female, if you are a female character and you ask, I think it was Prapti, one of the NPCs in Viranilia, she actually asks you if it's an inconvenience to have males to reproduce, because they apparently reproduce every egg they lay. It's going to be a female, so they don't have that problem, let's say. And Prapti kind of asks your character, how do they actually? I don't want to know. And if you're a male character, she even gets more personal, asking, how do you do the thing? And then, like, never mind.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's interesting, considering that for them, of course, they don't have males in their culture, so of course they would be intrigued by how that works. But anyways, the other thing, on a more serious note, is that the Ananta, especially in the Beast tribe quest line, the Ananta are said to be able, with magics, their jewelry and crafting abilities are unmatched, because they use magics to shape their crystals and their jewelry, which, in a sense, to me it seems quite reminiscent of the ancients and their creation magics, perhaps, of course, in a much mundane level, but I think there's definitely an element of that in the Ananta's culture.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Like a very primitive or basic version of.
Still waiting on Coperon, so I'm going to go over to.
Here.
Oh, welcome. The Ananta area. If you're back, you're welcome to read off what you've got.
All right. I think probably the most important thing about the Ananta is they mixed up the Ananta and the Aura lore. Ananta lay eggs without a need for a mate. And whilst the bonds between mother and daughter are strong, they have a tenuous concept of family. For these serpentine women, there's only Ananta and everyone else. They do not see the necessity for a family name to distinguish themselves from their own kin. I'm kidding about the Aura lore, by the way. It's just a joke that Aura lay eggs. Did we talk about Sri Lakshmi?
We have not this week.
Okay.
It is in the primal list, but please, anything that's relevant.
Perfect. Well, the Ananta also have an origin myth, and it's kind of interesting because there's a lot here that is very reminiscent of the Void. In the beginning, the nascent world was a form of chaos. All who lived upon it were frenzied and wild, and brought only harm to each other in the struggle for survival. Filled with despair at this wretched sight, Sri Lakshmi, the Lady of Bliss, took up handfuls of clay and sculpted a figure in her own image. Unto this figure she breathed life and will, and of her gentle touch was born the first of the Ananta. So it's kind of interesting that basically they see, yeah, I'm here to kill chaos. Sri Lakshmi has already killed chaos by making the Ananta in her own image, which is kind of interesting because the Ananta are far more scaly than Sri Lakshmi. But it also says that her creations, the gift of motherhood without a male counterpart, from this divine conception were born children of abundant vitality, granted by unreserved compassion of the goddess. The daughter's quality were destined to diverge from the mother and thus ensure splendid diversity for the tribe. So that's probably why they look a little bit different.
We're just going into the crystal chamber here.
Ah, yes, their sacred treasure room. Just walk on in.
So
Max level, what's up?
our friendly Ananta tribe is the Vira. They are those who wear the violet clothes. The hostiles are the Kalyana, the ones who wear blue, and those are those are we fight, and those are who try to temper the whole Alamigan newly formed council when in 4.1 when they got inside with temper people. They were ready to wreck some raise up some hell. So apparently for the Vera, what they consider the reason they help the Alamigan resistance is because they consider freedom and liberty the greatest of the virtues Sri Lakshmi blessed them with. Meanwhile, the Kalyana, they are highly devoted of as in a ritual for them to craft their crystals and give them shape as a sort of as the more beautiful, the more honor they're giving Sri Lakshmi. As far as I recall, though.
So yeah, Roxas brings up an interesting question. What makes them different from the Lamia from Oz's Law? And it's interesting because their history only dates back to the time of the Allegan Empire. So I think that much like the Ixali, the Ananta are another race that was Allegan born that wound up and evolved on the surface of the source, whereas the originals are still up in Oz's Law.
Yeah.
That could probably explain a thing or two about their origin myth too, and the whole chaos and bringing harm to each other senselessly sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's really quite interesting. How many
Could
races
explain-
are synthesized by the Alligans?
Go ahead, Meow.
No, I was saying that could explain their unusual method of reproduction. That there's no males, there's only an anta.
Alligans did a lot of crazy things, and creating one or two races like this would not be uncommon for them.
It's also possible that they, saw or heard of these races and were like, oh, I bet we could make those.
Uh-huh.
Though I could absolutely see them just making them too.
Or it could be some crazy Allegan scientist who had some weird memories of some crazy creatures they made while they were Amaratine.
True.
And they were like, this would be cool to make.
Or, it could be some sort of half-assed attempt to create harmony where things were broken when you're trying to make a half snake lady, as in female snake stuff. I'm just playing with Highland Soldier concepts, but make a lady who's half snake. You get, I mean, probably you get that, but or not. I don't know. And today I'm not my It's not my brightest day today. I'm sorry.
It's not good.
You're fine.
Inanta camps are always so threadbare, just desert settlements with very minimal walls or protection, and then they elegantly and ornately decorate. There's not much here. I always wish there was more town to the town, but I suppose it suits them.
A lot of it is hidden behind like cutscenes and such. I suppose they didn't really like flesh it out.
Yeah. Do we have anything else on the Ananta? Let's see. Who's up next?
I think we should probably talk about the Matanga with them being so prominent in Endwalker. And
Let's
we
do
do
it.
have a little bit on them.
Perfect. Go for it. I'll pull up an image.
All right. So much about this tribe of mammoth-headed warriors has yet to be properly studied. I'm going to add outside of Thavner for that. The most commonly accepted theory places the origin of the Matanga in the Near East, but in recent years they have also been spotted roaming the plains of the Azim Steppe. They rival Gigants in size. Their thick limbs are possessed of enormous strength, and despite their ponderous gait, each step carries them a considerable distance. And outrunning an enraged Matanga across the open steppe is a feat best attempted on horseback. The warrior leader of the Matanga, known as Grand Regent, rules over a Matanga herd. This title, however, was one of the many which belonged to the king of a now ruined Near Eastern nation, and seems merely a convenient substitution for the word used in their own language. Much of the tribe's culture is thus lost in translation, with scholars yet struggling to fully define how this authority is decided or acted upon. Under the Garlean regime, the Matanga are not afforded the status of people, their inability to pronounce civilized tongues relegating them to the status of slaves or cattle. Following the command of an individual known as the Grand Regent Anjana, one group broke free of their chains and fled their brutal treatment at the hands of the Imperials. Their wild escape took them to the plains of the Azim Steppe, where they now live in a state of conflict with the native Zayla.
Nice
So it's gonna
foul.
yeah.
This is them, right?
It's gonna be interesting seeing them in Thavner and like learning about how to even communicate with them.
Yes, definitely.
If that was them, I would not leave because that song slaps.
It does slap. It's funny.
Yeah, so there's more. Although the reason's unclear, the Matanga despise the Aura with a fury. Their hatred runs so deep that when they attack the Azim Steppe natives, it's not for food or plunder, but just to kill Aura. Naturally, the proud Zayla natives don't shrink from a fight, and they don't take too kindly to that. And often the Matanga find themselves cut down in vicious counterattack. So even despite that, no matter how decisively the Aura punish their tormentors, the Matanga always come back.
Would love to know what on earth is up with that. That seems just so weird.
Maybe they're tempered.
Oh, these ones, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah. Eastern naturalists indicated their intelligence is not as stunted as first thought, considering they appear to have a prominent role in Thavner. It's also discovered that the beastmen's extraordinary ears can detect sounds below the range of normal hearing, and they can communicate with spoken words combined with a pattern of foot stomps. Certain of their vocalizations are too deep for other races to even register. However, and thus complete understanding of the Matanga history, culture, or way of thinking has proven difficult to grasp unless you have the echo.
Interesting. Wish we knew someone who had the echo.
Yeah,
Same.
no idea.
I guess it makes sense, especially now that we are pretty much, thanks to Adi, we are 9 times rejoined. Yeah, well, 8 times rejoined. Fair. We are 9 parts of 14. It makes sense that we could, for example, understand what the Matanga are saying, even though there's this language barrier for the other normal races.
So yeah,
Is that
Roxas
really
brings up
Matanga?
Yeah.
yeah. Roxas brings up a good point that it's interesting how the Matanga in Thavnir that we've seen seem to be artisans and very cultured, whereas these are more like feral children that grew up under Garlean rule.
They're a lot like the naked Namazu. In fact, they just wander
Mhm.
around and they're angy and they don't wear anything.
You carry rattles.
You
Yep.
Yeah, they're little
don't want to
carry
get hit by
rattles.
that rattle.
At level 80, you can get really close to them in your own aggro.
Plot twist: the Matanga and the steppe are actually Faust kids.
Oh no.
I found their crystal cave. Actually, they're in a crystal cave.
Huh.
Shiny. It's northeast of the where it says the Towering Still, and it's right beneath the red marker.
I seem to recall there being some either main or side story quest in there.
Caves.
Yes.
I remember a daily where I had to go in there and kill them.
I'm in an area where there's blue crystals all around.
Blue crystal in the shape of
Square.
It's very interesting. They're primarily herbivores. They eat grass, fruit, vegetables, and occasionally salt-laden clay or shale.
eat shale. Wow. These crystals are in the shape of the House of the Crooked Coin shape as well. Kind of.
That's a
Just
little
kind of
weird.
geometric.
The
That's
cricket
kind-
coin was more like long and turning things, but yes, still very interesting.
I'm gonna fly up there.
Maybe this
Oh,
was like a quarry or something.
Yeah, possibly.
Columnar crystal
Um,
formations.
Maybe we because it's dropped by Yashtola at the in the final instance of 5.55. We know that similar to Cardinal, there's a confluence of ether underneath this step, so it could be related these crystals to that.
Yes.
Maybe those of Cardinal.
By the way, this is it's a good reason why you guys should take field trips. Just look around and discover things, because that's what we do.
And you never know what you're going to find.
I mean, we knew we were going to find Matanga.
Ha.
I know they're not the same. It just kind of reminded me, seeing the way they're carved in a specific... God, that's creepy. How deep that goes.
Oh yeah.
That's like Bahamut coil levels of creepy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
The artificial bottom of the Azim step.
It's almost like a visual metaphor for the lore of this game.
Yeah,
Indeed.
absolutely. It's under the surface. It's huge.
I do recommend the audience to take a field trip to the burn in Explorer mode.
Oh yeah, the burn in
dungeon.
explorer mode is really interesting too.
Yes. Actually, really any instance in Explorer mode, because going through the dungeons, you're just there to get to the end, get your loot, and get out. You never really get a chance to like stop and look around. So if you do get a chance, like I said, go through Explorer mode in the dungeons. Take an extremely close look at everything. If you're out in the world, go to places you don't normally visit. There is bound to be something that you missed in passing. Things like if you look into Kurthus, the Central Highlands, you will see pieces of the Ragnarok ship up in the mountains, which you weren't able to see before because you didn't have flying before. So,
Or the fragment of coil in the area, Nidhouse Lair.
Mm-hmm. That's one that people often miss. I point it out almost every time I run it. Well, what's next on the docket here? We should move on.
Yes.
I think this brings us, unless I'm missing something, this brings us over to the first. We've talked about the Fae extensively, but kind of parsing out the different races with some lore could be fun.
Unless you want to talk about the Bonga or the Sikh, which I kind of don't.
Yeah, that's a good point. Those are the Final Fantasy XI races that are present in the Evil East quest line and in
12.
12 in general.
Did you say 11?
Yeah, he said 11.
Yeah,
I did.
They're from 12.
Well, there's a lot of numbers.
There
Sometimes I
is.
misspeak.
If only there was explorer mode for the Evil East raids.
There should be
No.
explorer mode for everything.
There should. I think they're working on it. It's pretty remarkable how many things they've patched into the game recently.
Explorer mode for the Dying Gasp when.
Right.
So I'm trying to find a good resource for the Pixies. Do you guys have any thoughts on them?
I think we discussed the pixies before when we discussed the sylphs. I would actually be interested in discussing, and I don't know if we can say much about the Fuath, but the Numa are certainly interesting. Not just because they are also an Evilist race, but because they seem to have been part of the Bubertite society from before the Pixies and the other Fae came to what is now Ilmec.
Apparently, Fuath it translates as hatred in Gaelic.
That
I can
certainly
see that.
sums them up.
They are very spiteful souls of drowned.
I'm just pulling from the Wikipedia article, the historical one, not the Final Fantasy one. The term Fuath has been explained to be a generic class of spirits inhabiting the sea, rivers, and fresh water, or sea lochs, with several subspecies falling under it. The image I'm looking at looks an awful lot like the Zora from Zelda.
Interesting.
Which is no surprise since completely different game franchise, but Link is essentially a gamification of another aspect of Celtic mythology. The details are escaping me, but the Hero of Time is the thing we're looking at. So, but anyway, the Fuath are from that school of lore, and I'm going to pull them up on the Final Fantasy Wikia here in a second. I also have the Numo up already, so.
The scene with the Fuath in Dunmeg, every time I run Dunmeg with one of my alts, it gives me major brain worms because of how Shadowbringers narrative is built. Neela was recently replaying Shadowbringers, and I think you, Neela, realized how Shadowbringers tells you the story of the endgame before endgame happens through the events of the you know, through Calusia, Amarang, Ilmeg, Raktika. It's all telling you what's going to happen in the end.
Indeed.
So, no,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I would say it's not obvious until you look at it in hindsight, but then it's really powerful.
And the thing with Don Meg, when the Fuath are actually discussing, they want to keep the Warrior of Light because yes, I could watch them forever, and stuff. Why don't we make them one of us? And then they begin chanting one of us, one of us, one of us, and then Angthon says, why wouldn't I think this before? You can have this, but in exchange we will have you. And this reminds me, I mean, that always, I'm not saying it is, but always that situation makes me think maybe that's what happened to Asam. Maybe it's someone, as you know who, decided I want to keep them forever because I enjoy and we're kind of validated that train of thought when we got to Anamnesis and Either, and we learned that Venar and her Posey they wanted Asem to be part of them. Of course, I'm not saying this was the intention, but it certainly gives the impression of the Fuath trying to temper the Warrior of Light.
Are not the Sahagin, are not Leviathan's thralls called the Drowned?
Yes.
Yes, they are. They are, indeed. But
It is
yes,
interesting, though.
this narrative is really the narrative. I love that narrative because I recognize immediately from Lightning Returns, Final Fantasy 13. So something to look forward, Nila. And just an example, the other example, Holminster Switch, which is the first dungeon we run in 2.0. I mean 5.0. That's basically a lower scale Amorot.
Yeah, I could see that.
I hadn't actually considered that before. That's interesting.
The horrors might be differently colored, but that's about the only difference. That and we actively see the transformations instead of these things already being created and rampaging. I see you found the good pictures of the Foi and the Numo.
For the Numo, I can give you. I mean, I know my 12 lore, sort of, especially tactics. I can give you more. I'm the Numo here as Fey folk. They are different. They are more like they like mortals. They are thrilled to be of use of them, but at the same time they seem to have some words of power which are instantly related to dog commands, to force them to act like as you want. But in the Evil Alliance series, the Numo are, well, they are one of the races. They are probably not most spiritual, but in a sense, but they are the most magically aligned race of all the races of Iblis. So I guess it makes sense that they were chosen to be Fae.
Yeah, Clara, those are especially as a little shout out or throw out to the dog lovers. You might say throwing a bone to the dog lovers with that.
Why?
Go back to hiccuping Bond.
by
That's funny.
the by, if you have
I do
played
that too.
anyway, any of you have played Final Fantasy Tactics Advance?
Yes, it's so good.
Have you? Okay. There's one of the Pixie quest lines, which has to do with with one of the pixies trying to create a love potion, and if you check that the love potion is called the the Cereal, which is the main town of Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, and also the rogue Numo faction, the lawless ones. In Japanese, they were called the anti-laws. Perhaps if you play the Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, you realize that this is a reference to Essel Verbir, the Numo, the alchemist that crafted the anti-law cards. So this is probably jumble for those who have not played that game. Actually, I would say go and play that game.
It's a very, very good game. I actually played Tactics Advanced before Tactics, so it was kind of a switcheroo for me.
Big
But after
same.
I actually played after I played Tactics Advanced, I went and played Tactics just because I love the world.
I love all three of them: Tactics, Tactics Advanced, and Tactics Advanced 2. My only complaint about Tactics Advanced 2 is the removal of having full MP at the beginning of the battle, which for me, who I really like casters, was like.
Big same. Damn it, Meowth! Now I want to play it again.
I am actually I actually consider once I'm done with streaming the 13 trilogy, I consider streaming kind of with some, I guess, with a Game Boy Advance emulator to stream Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, because it's so good, and it's such a shame that people largely the people do not usually know this game. It's kind of one of the classics of the Game Boy Advance, like Golden Sun.
Oh, don't get me started on Golden Sun.
I think part of the problem with that is that it came out on Game Boy Advance, and there are so many people who just didn't own it, or had aged out of owning that kind of handheld at the point the game was released.
Yeah, the last Game Boy I had was the original.
Yeah, I had a Game Boy Advance for a time, but I missed out on that as well. I feel like Nintendo could do a better job of like keeping up with their older catalog.
So this is what they looked like in 12, the Numo?
Golden Sun,
This is how they looked in 12. The other art is for how they look in Tactics and Tactics Advanced and Tactics Advanced 2. Because in Tactics, thanks to Vena, they no longer exist. They extinct.
Wow, thanks a lot, Vena.
I like
Once
the
again.
little whiskers on the sides.
Once again, Vana ruins everything.
That's what I was implying. I like their little
She's
ear
chaotic.
bells.
I like their 12 or 14 design more.
Their 14 design is based on the Tactics depiction of the Numo, actually. If you go check those. They're actually quite adorable.
Yeah. Yeah, they super are. Which makes sense, because this game is, I don't know. Obviously, they're both Evilise, but there's something about the tactics stuff that seems more, they're using it more, you know, rather than...
Tactics in 12 really do seem to correlate a lot to the lore of this game.
I mean, we know Yoshi P is Matsuno fanboy, and like we commented in other streams, the Evilise lore fits so well with the 14 lore, they might as well be the same universe.
I do agree. This Final Fantasy XIV is so integrated with the Evilise lore. It's basically Evilise plus.
I mean, they basically inserted all of Dalmasca and Vagrant Story, actually, some of Vagrant Story. Into it, and it doesn't seem weird at all. And
given that Ilsabard's kind of still a blank slate, I mean, they could really add more if they wanted to, and it would fit.
Yep.
Leamond is an actual city in Dalmasca Inferior, which is south of Dalmasca.
And Valnain too. Valnain is the capital of Naxia.
So yeah, there's even city names from the actual games too, from Tactics, from 12, from Vagrant Story. All has been integrated.
Yeah, like back in Heaven's Word, it wasn't clear how deep they were going to go with the Scions of Darkness and everything. But now, 2 expansions later, it's very, very clear that it's kind of the core element of Final Fantasy XIV. and I am hugely in favor.
So I would say that we are only for now missing as beast tribes the moon rabbit.
Loporrits.
About whom little is known.
Very little.
Yep.
So we
I'm
got,
guessing they're going to be very excited to see us.
Get off my rock.
They'll be
mostly-
happy.
I'm
Do you
mostly
worship
interested
Zodiac
to see
too?
if any of them are tempered or if it's going to be another situation where there's a tempered tribe and a tribe that isn't tempered. But you would think that being on the moon, that anything there would just be auto-tempered to Zodiac's presence. But who knows?
Not necessarily, considering that we've already seen that there are terminus beasts on the moon. I think they're going to be basically holding the line for Zodiac.
They are wearing purple. That's certainly interesting.
They could just be stewards of the Asians.
I would
That's what I'm
also
thinking.
argue that if being on the surface of the planet Heidelin isn't enough to temper you to the goddess Heidelin, then being on the surface of the moon shouldn't be enough to temper you to Zodiac.
Agreed.
Imagine if Tsukiyomi went up there and they were like, Moon Priestess.
Okay, but now I kind of want that.
Yes.
Now I actually want that too. I'm even dressed for the occasion.
To be
I'm super excited for that.
fair, I'm intrigued by how this came to be. Like deity and Sunder made them out of loneliness. Maybe Zodiac made them because he was feeling lonely too. We don't know, but at the same time, we have to consider that, as far as we know, the tempering of the convocation was an accident. It was an accident. It was it was the side effect of summoning him through their bodies and through their powers, and because they were at ground zero, there is no hint that any other ancient was affected but them. So I wouldn't go as far as to say that Zodiac is meant to temper. We don't have any other instances of tempering aside from this singular incident, whereas Heidelin has been tempering Warriors of Light from a very long time.
Now that's interesting. It has a very similar moon as the Menfina earring and a similar kind of blue going on there.
Yeah, for some reason during the FanFest announcement, they had this filter on their screen that made all of the colors not actually accurate. So
Yeah.
if you get the pictures that are actually from the press site, like that one is, the Loporrits attire is actually blue, not purple.
Well,
It's a very
all right,
rich
I
royal
guess I'm
blue.
wrong. Yeah.
All of Thavner.
Oh
I
yeah,
guess maybe-
Thavner looks really wrong if you watch the presentation and then you actually look at stills or even just the benchmark.
Yeah,
About
it's really
the
bad.
Loporrits, I think we're going to learn the truth from one of them. I think that they're going to be thousands of years old individuals. I don't think they're going to age. This is all tinfoil from FAO, but I think we're going to learn the secrets of up there on the moon from
That
the
would
old
be
naming
awesome.
ways- from the old naming ways here, who've been like both heralds and stewards of moon lore for millennia. That's my guess.
I wonder if these rabbits are gonna like react to us as if we're Zen rather than like some traveler from below.
I would find it interesting personally if they had, say, gotten ejected from the planet in the Sundering or something.
Mm-hmm.
I of course I can't be sure of that, but I'm fairly sure that they are acquainted with the Asians and Elidibus in particular.
I would agree with that, and I tend to think that as Zodiac created new life to restore the world, I don't think Zodiac ever really stopped, and so I think these will likely be almost the children of Zodiac.
He certainly would have had to stop when he ran out of power, I figure, but yeah, I see what you're saying.
Petition for art of Elidibus snuggling bunnies or Zodiac snuggling bunnies.
I feel like
think
the Elidibus art's
I've
already
seen
been
the
done.
Elidibus art, yeah.
But,
A few of them.
But certainly, I would love to see more of that for sure. And he deserves it.
Yeah, some sadness. Oh no, our friend is gone.
And then it's like Zodiark shows up in some kind of more humanoid hot form, and he's just friends with all the little bunny people.
I mean, it's not impossible that he could manifest, though without one could argue that his manifestation was Elizabeth, but that's not exactly.
That's entirely inaccurate. That was the assumption, but it was incorrect.
Right. Elidibus was representative of something inside of him.
If anything, Zodiark was a manifestation of Elidibus. Sorry.
Exactly.
Fair.
Yeah. Exactly.
So maybe Zodiark as himself can, just like Hydaelyn has those races up down in the source, maybe these people and the Asians were Zodiark's people. And I have to say that the way they're looking, this thing does not look like a creation of an evil dark god, and that I can tell you.
Well, I mean, Zodiark's not an evil dark god.
I know. It's just to point that out that people are calling him demonic and stuff. It's just because how he apparently looks, and it's like, they've been building up this name of the dark god and stuff, and it turns out that his creations are adorable rabbits.
I think that'll go a long way to making people realize that there really are, like, there are two sides in this, but it's not good versus bad or good versus evil. It's just two opposing sides who want the same thing, but are going about it in different ways.
I would ask something of you, Faust, though, if I may.
Of course.
Because the Loporrits, they of course they are based on the race that inhabits the moon in Final Fantasy IV, but they
Yes.
also, their model resembles too much the Mughals from Final Fantasy XII.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I'll
So
pull that
if
up.
you can put up some a render of a Mughal from 12, you can see what I mean.
There you go. Have a look.
Yes. So you see, I have this theory right now. Of course, it's just tinfoil hat theories, but that the Loporrits are Ansundra Mughals.
Interesting.
So the sundering shortened their ears. Tragic.
Now we really have to pursue the Great Rejoining.
I just put up a picture of the 3D version of Final Fantasy IV.
Oh yeah, I see it.
These are the naming ways, and
Mhm.
up on the moon there's a different tribe. I often get them reversed, with the humming way and the naming way are the two different tribes. One of them you can rename your character, the other one's just hum at you.
So that covers pretty much everything, doesn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, it's pretty much all the tribes, including the ones we haven't met yet.
We do confess we've talked over more of the ones that we have liked than those that we've kind of liked in passing. But I'm sure you share our sentiment with certain beast tribes like the Namazu and Mughals and such.
Some of them just get more screen time or more lore than others.
Having the Beast Tribe quest certainly gives you a lot more insight into them as a people, indeed.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, it's basically a matter of nomenclature, because in the end, we go to the first, and it turns out that the dwarves, they're the Lalafell, and they are considered a beast tribe of sorts. So it's not about that they are beast anything, because there's this thing that, of course, the Uldans may have coined the term, but it doesn't excuse anyone, the rest of Eorzea, borrowing the term, and Charlayan as well. For as much as they say that they are equal and stuff, they still address in their Charlayan propaganda to all of them as beast tribes. So it's kind of perpetuating that lie.
All the more reason for us to go to Charlayan and set him straight.
And make the world's best dad call you daddy.
I was thinking it, but I'm not going to say it out loud.
Just bring Dulia Chai to the source. Tell her what's been going on.
Mm-hmm.
She'll take the first ship out.
Nah, we can deal with Fortune.
Actually, she won't even take a ship. She'll swim there if she has to.
Well, I guess that about wraps it up. In the interest of not having too much dead air, is there anything you guys wanted to say in closing, or regarding next week, or anything like that?
Yes, don't forget LunarCon, August 1st at 12 Eastern. And then we'll have our regular scheduled show.
Yes. Yes.
We'll tweet out information too if it comes up.
Go ahead.
No, I wanted to warn I actually didn't say that before, but I wanted to warn that perhaps I may not be able to be present, not this next week, the next one. I may not. I don't know when I return. I know it's a Sunday, so I may be here, maybe not. So I apologize in advance.
Oh, it's
Do not
absolutely
worry.
no problem. We always have a flowing roster, and I'm sure it'll be fine.
I know. It's just that I feel bad when I don't. When I felt bad when I didn't attend school. So you get the idea.
Absolutely. Okay, well, I guess I'll close it out. Thank you guys. We lost some energy on the end here, but it's tribes we just don't have as much information about as we'd like, and we will see you all back here next week. Please tell your friends, and we'll have a topic out in the next couple days or so. Anyway, thanks again, and thanks for being at Lorelines.
Thanks for your support. We'll see you next
There
time.
you go.
Take care, everybody.
And bye-bye.